good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Veteran Voices, brought to you on the Garage Bar Radio Network. And, of course, our anchor sponsor is Buffalo Wild Wings. Only at your local B-Dubs in Frederick, Urbana, Rockville, Gaithersburg, and Columbia. Wings, beer, sports, you have to be here. And I am thrilled today because today's the first episode. And every time you get ready to do the first of anything, you always get super duper excited. Like the first time you got to hook up with a young lady, the first time the drill sergeant let you shoot. But I'm here with two daggone veterans. We have Dominic Mancuso. Did I say it correctly?
You nailed it, brother.
Yeah, it only took 32 tries trying to figure that out. And Kaleb, Lyons, two combat veterans, and obviously amazing beard owners. And what made them really special was everyone else that comes on the show after this, you got to bring a gift, because they brought a gift, and you can guarantee this is going to go on the wall over Captain America himself, because there's nothing more American than a bulldog. So we're here. We're thrilled to be here. And really what we're going to talk about in the first segment is, you know, I had an opportunity where I went to a school and I talked to kids, and it was the first time that I realized that there are kids here that weren't alive during 9/11. So I was curious with both of y'all. Are y'all 9/11 babies? And what I mean by that, were y'all's call to arms, call to action, so to speak? Was it 9/11? And if so, take us through that.
For me, it was definitely 9/11. I remember I was in middle school at the time, living out in California, and I woke up to the sounds of my mom screaming while she was watching TV. And I already had inklings of wanting to join the military before that, even at a very young age. But yeah, going down and seeing that, at that age I was able to at least register what was happening, and that's what kind of set me on the warpath, so to speak, to enlist. You
were a lot younger than me.
Yeah, a few years.
Why is your beard game stronger?
I care.
Oh, well, that hurt my feelings.
You gotta step it up, man.
And how about you? Were you a 9/11 baby as well?
Yeah, I was in middle school, but I don't. 9/11 wasn't really a trigger for me to go into the military. For me, it was probably more of like, it's kind of like a combination of me like not knowing what I wanted to do with myself. Like I remember in high school, the teachers were always pushing like, college this, college that, start taking your SATs, start looking at colleges, and I was like, I just couldn't really see myself in that environment. I wanted to do something different, and my family's had I've had a lot of family members in the Marine Corps, so I was like,
13 generations.
Yeah, this guy.
13 generations.
Apparently.
Are you Irish?
Yeah.
Yeah, so why is it something about, you know, we talk about on our other show, Two Fools on the Stools, that we're a huge Conor McGregor fan, but what is it about you Irish, man? All y'all want to do is drink and fight. I'm not going to say the other one, because we already said we're not going to drop F-bombs on here. We're going to stay away from being that, you know, that grunt mentality. We're going to leave them alone, but we know with the third F, but what is it about the Irish? Why do y'all have that moniker, the Fighting Irish?
I don't know, man. I can't tell you. I guess it's just how we are. I've got nothing. I got nothing here.
So you were Iraq?
Yeah.
And you were Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah, and a peacekeeping tour in Egypt for a year. That really doesn't count.
Yeah, I also did a MU, but that wasn't anything either.
Okay, so let's actually take a second. And when were you in Iraq?
I was in Iraq in 2008.
2008, and when were you in Afghanistan?
In 2010.
Now, the crazy thing to me about when I was there, the year that I was there, that August in Iraq was actually, unless something changed, I'm sure there might be a fact checker out there, but when I was out there, I was told that was one of the worst months in the history of the actual conflict and part of the war. And during that time that I was there, Afghanistan was called the Forgotten War. Everybody was like, nobody even paying attention to the fact that we actually had people that are over there deployed, they're serving, even though that was the first one that kicked off. But yet, you look after that, by the time I got back, Afghanistan really ratcheted it up. So, you know, give us kind of a feel. What was your thought process as far as the difference between the two theaters?
So, I was in Iraq during the Iraq surge, and my brigade was the first one as part of the Afghanistan surge. So I got a pretty unique perspective as far as we're there during a chaotic situation. And luckily, when I was in Iraq, it was weird. They forgot Afghan was the forgotten war, was kind of still there. But when I first got there, by the time I was leaving Iraq in late 2008, everything was happening in Afghanistan. Things were going downhill, and this is right around the time that General McChrystal took over and started some of his policies. So General McChrystal was there for a lot of 2009. And supposedly making things better. When I went there in early 2010, things had gone just absolutely horrible. And like the rules of engagement were terrible. Troops were dying left and right. Like the casualty rate had risen so high that finally President Obama realized that there's something wrong here, and he pulled McChrystal out and put Petraeus. Petraeus, the guy who fixed Iraq with the Iraq surge, put Petraeus in charge of Afghanistan, and that really helped things. But I know Afghanistan 2010 was a really rough year. That was a really rough year for our troops, and the main difference is between Iraq and Afghanistan is, at least in Afghanistan, the locals, there's a good amount of them who actually want us there. Like, I can't tell you how many Afghans I talked to who, like, old school Northern Alliance ties and stuff like that, who absolutely love the fact that we were there. And that to me, that was the biggest difference, was because we're going through areas where the Russian army was, a couple years prior to us there, and, like, entire armor columns are wiped out on this very road that we're going down on, like, 4 gun trucks, where the most casualty-producing weapon we have is a Mark 19 Navy. So that's what told me, if these people actually hated us and really wanted us dead, we would be.
And the thing, I actually saw something that was just shared recently and was talked about, and it could have been an old article, honestly, but it was talking about the fighting season. And I always made the joke, at least that was my experience in Iraq. I don't know what your experience was being a combat engineer. But my experience was, if it was shitty weather, I wasn't even worried. Yep. Like, if it's miserable, if it's cold, if it's pissing, like, whatever, man, I don't got nothing to worry about. But if it's a damn nice day with, like, 80 degrees and a westerly wind, your ass is getting lit up.
You're getting shot at, you're getting blown up, or at least you're going to hear something. Guaranteed.
Now, in Afghanistan, they say this literally does come in season time. It's like after the opiate, after they've harvested, I guess, however you harvest opiates. I haven't farmed opiates in my lifetime, but
neither have I.
But maybe you know about the time they're actually picking it up. So how is that? What is the fighting season over there?
So, like, a lot of it is the fact that Afghanistan has very high mountainous regions where it snows heavily and whatnot, and a lot of the passes get blocked up. And so what kind of opens up the fighting season is those passes start to melt away, and that foreign fighters are now able to basically pour into the country, into the better weather of Afghanistan, which weather really dictates what fighting season really is. Now, granted, you have a lot of other circumstances, factors like the opium harvesting and also political situations, but it really has to do with weather, just like in Iraq. If it's good weather, if it's a bright, sunshiny day, anything above 70 degrees and below 105 degrees, you're going to get shot at, you're going to get blown up, or you're going to at least hear it. Like, just like guaranteed. Or you're going to hear about, like, adjacent unit activity, it happening to them. It's guaranteed. But yeah, if there's even just overcast, it's like, Haji doesn't want to fight.
Yeah. So, we kind of got jumped a little bit ahead of ourselves just because we ended up talking about it. But I'm curious, y'all went into the military. How long did you serve?
I did 4 years.
So you did 4 years, and how long did you do?
7.5.
7.5. And I was right at 8. What did you love about the military? Was there anything that you loved about it besides the fact that you got 3 hots in the cot?
Brotherhood.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Camaraderie. Yeah.
And why do you think that one of the things that our national president, National of the Desert Night, says is that brotherhood it's what they use to accomplish the mission. But for people that have never experienced it, for people that have never been in the military, we have a lot of civilians that watch, and they want to kind of understand, especially because, you know what, you are starting to see that high transition rate where people are getting out of the military, they're coming to the civilian sector, and all of a sudden, you got this really cool-looking, bearded, tattooed guy that probably wears an awesome hat, and we're going to talk about veteran clothing in a little bit, but they know that he's a veteran, and, maybe, I'm not saying it's a fact, but maybe he looks like sometimes he wants to hit you with the coffee pot, or she wants to hit you with the coffee pot. But what is the difference? When you talk about brotherhood, can you describe that, what it is for y'all?
It's just something about going through the same kind of struggles. With people that have gone through the same struggles as you don't have to explain anything to them. Like, civilians have no idea, just the kind of, like, day-to-day stress that you go through, not even being in combat, just being in, like, day-to-day military, that, the people that you're going through it with, there's kind of like a bonding over things that suck, basically, but, I mean, but it's true, right? It's true, so.
Embrace this.
But it sounds so unappetizing, right? Like, when people talk to me about being in the military, I'm like, yeah, sure. You don't really do much all day long, and then all of a sudden, you wait around to 1700 to get the word, and all of a sudden now there's a complete laundry list of things that you have to get accomplished during the day before you're now allowed to get off. Now, you were active duty, and you were active duty guard, or how did that play out again?
I was National Guard, but I spent most of my time in the Guard on active duty status.
Do you think that is harder. And what I mean by that is, you see a lot of people don't understand that you can be in the guards, you can be in the reserve. You're technically a guard or reserve soldier, airman, marine, but you're actually still not active duty. You're active in that they put you in every day, but you're actually not an active duty component.
Yeah, we're not living in barracks and stuff like that all the time. We're not. And honestly, like, that was one of my biggest regrets for the military is going guard and not going active duty. I kind of wish I would have had that experience, but luckily, and the Brotherhood is still very much still alive there in the Guard and the Reserves, especially those of us who spend a lot of time doing it and are constantly volunteering for extra stuff and give me this, give me that, I want it. So, yeah.
And really, what we're going to talk about in the second part of this is the transition. But at what point in time, and I'll start with you, Kaleb. At what point in time did you say, you know what? And you, in a lot of ways, you are. And when I say stereotypical, I don't mean that in a bad way. You're what the reality is for most service people. You go in, you do your 4 years, you do your contract, you serve your country, and you say, you know what, I'm going to go roll out. So what about it for you made you decide that, you know what, I want to get out, I want to go do something outside of this?
It was kind of like on the fence for me, honestly, because I had like a mild interest in staying in, but at the time, like, this was in 2009 when I got back from my second deployment, which was the MEU. I had like this was right around the time where we were doing the surge into Afghanistan, and what I was told was that my job as an engineer was in high demand because the terrain was so bad they couldn't traverse it with vehicles, so everything was on foot, and they were patrolling Ranger file with an engineer sweeping as the first guy on the patrol.
It's so true.
And just real quick, not to cut you off, but there are a lot of people that are watching that are civilians. A lot of people right now, when they're hearing engineer, they're thinking that you know how to build a building, and it's
not that fancy.
Is that what it is, or is it a fancy term for bomb finder?
Well, my entirety of what I did in my deployment was a bomb finder. The only thing I did in my deployment was sweep with the mine detector for weapons caches and a little bit of route clearance, but that's the bulk of what I did was sweep with the mine detector.
Now, the real question, I saw a joke, I can never say it, I don't know if it's meme, or whatever, but did you ever happen to go walking along and realize that nothing's beeping, feeling like a good day, and then realize that your battery was dead?
No, that never happened, because that's,
so you checked
that's one of the first things we check before we go on patrol.
Okay, listen, not everybody doesn't always tell me that that there's a running joke that Marines aren't smart, but you strike me as an intelligent Marine. So I think there's a huge compliment, right?
That's why
I'll take it. Yeah, exactly.
So you ended up you said, hey, I'm going to do the transition. At any point in time during that transition period, like right when it was coming down to the end of the day, were you kind of hesitant about it at any point in time, or were you really gung ho until you were out of the service?
Well, anyway, what happened was, like I said, they were demanding engineers in Afghanistan at the time. That right around the time I was getting out, and they were like, well, we would like it if you would extend your contract for 3 months so you can do a pump to Afghanistan. And at this point, I had already gone to Iraq and I did the MEU, and I had kind of a mild interest to be a drill instructor at Parris Island.
Yeah.
And I went and I spoke to the career planner, and he told me that basically because engineers were in such high demand, that I would have to sign an agreement to do 2 more years deployable status for Afghanistan, and then they would process me for drill instructor school. And I was like, thinking in my brain at this time, like, I know 2 years from now, if I survive, they're going to magically lose my paperwork, and it never happened. And, oh, by the way, you're going to go do this now.
Yeah.
And I was just like, you know what?
Recruiter.
Yeah, I was just like, you know what? I'm not doing that, so I'm just going to get out. So it was kind of like I might stay in if they let me do this thing. They weren't going to let me do it. Okay, have a nice day. I'm done. So. And
how about you, Dominic? What was your transition like? When did you decide it was time to pack bags and head out of the house?
So my leaving the military was very sudden and kind of unfortunate. When I was in Egypt, my initial 6 years was up, and I re-enlisted while I was there. At the time,
tax-free?
Oh yeah, tax-free, 20 grand lump sum bonus. Yeah, I was all for that.
I don't even want to know what worthless stuff you spent that on.
Well, unfortunately, I never got it.
Wow.
Because, and hence the reason why I'm not still in right now. By the time we rotated back home, mine and around 50 other guys' reenlistment paperworks, mysteriously got left behind,
Just
or
what I was talking
destroyed,
about,
or
yeah.
misplaced. And they said, "Don't worry, we'll sign new reenlistment paperwork and we'll figure out your bonus later." Like, okay, no. First off, I've been in the game long enough to know that's absolute bullshit. You will sign me a new paperwork with a new bonus with a date dating back to when I originally did it in Egypt under tax-free conditions. I said, "Oh, well, we don't know if we can do that." I'm like, "Well, you're going to, or I'm walking." They said, "Okay, well, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to sign you a 1-year extension letter." And I said, "Okay, that's fine. However, I want a clause saying at any point in time I feel like I'm getting the reach around, I can walk." And they actually gave that to me. And I was getting to the end of that year extension, and nothing was getting done. They kept pushing me just to sign the reenlistment paperwork and say, "Well, we'll deal with the bonus later." And I was just fed up. I was done. I was tired of. At that point, I had done 3 voluntary deployments in a 4-year span. I was like, "I've given you everything, and you're fighting me on this minuscule thing." So,
Yeah.
so I walked that day.
Well, it's crazy. In my case, my mother had passed away when I was in airborne school, and that will actually happen during the transition from basic training to airborne school. And they were supposed to literally walk me from basic training. I went to Benning, obviously. They were supposed to walk me from Delta Company, which is funny. Delta Company, Delta Dragons men are we, Airborne Ranger Infantry. We breathe fire, we breathe gas. Delta Dragons, we kick that ass. I can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, but I can still remember what I had to say to get lunch back in the day. But they were literally supposed to walk me across the street to airborne school, get me checked in, and get me shipped out. That didn't happen, and it actually ended up not leaving until a day and a half later, so I almost missed my mother's funeral. My brother committed suicide 6 months later, and I almost missed his funeral. I was supposed to be on emergency leave, I was supposed to be on traditional leave, and I couldn't even get an emergency leave for a day early. And so right as I had finished up, I had actually completed a Ranger Indoctrination program at Fort Myer and had been recommended and selected to go to Ranger School. And I ended up, they told us, "Hey, listen, you got a full year to go to Ranger School upon the completion of this course." And I had this dick of a captain, and I hope some way, somehow he hears the broadcast, but Captain Janzik, I hate your soul. But anyway, he looks me in the eye and he goes, "You're going to Ranger School next week." And my father had just had a tree limb fall out of, he was a logger, had a tree limb fall out, hit him on his head.
Jeez.
And his head was split. They didn't know if he was going to make it. And I said, "Hey, listen, sir, I'm not going to be able to go to Ranger School until I know how this is going to play." Because you may not know because you're a Marine, but you know it. I mean, Ranger School, if I go to day 30 and he dies, I don't get to leave and come back to day 30.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
At that point, you have to recycle.
Yeah, you got to make a tough decision. So
Yeah,
I said, "Hey, listen, I'm not going to Ranger School, but let me see how this plays out." And he looked at me and he said, "Hey, listen, if you don't do this, your refusal of Army school, you'll never go to another Army school again."
Yeah.
And so I saluted, "Roger that, sir." And that literally, I went from being a career guy, I was going to do full 20. I got promoted quickly, whole 9 yards, and that literally was the reason why I said, "You know what? I'm going to get out, and I'm not going to do it." And that is the one thing I think that the military does so many things well. I think that it does. I think it actually brings in people and puts you with people from outside, not like college where you go to college and it's like, "Well, I'm going to go find everybody that looks and acts and talks just like me." In the military, your ass is from the Bronx, get over here with Houston, and y'all better hang out, and you better not go one without the other. And so I do think that it gets you and has you the ability, and if you looked in Iraq and Afghanistan, you got young 20-some-year-old men and women that are actually going out and playing major leadership roles and trying to rebuild a nation. So I think there's a ton of stuff that it does good for you, but the thing that I think that it does bad for you is I think that a lot of times you do become just another number.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
just another person. And what's
Cognitive
crazy to
machine.
me about that, you talk about like being in the recruit and losing paperwork. What is their benefit of losing it? They don't get an extra bonus or any of that stuff. So I think that's why a lot of people, they become disenfranchised with the notion of it, and that's why they end up getting out of the military. And before we transition on, I want to make sure that we go ahead and we let y'all know about what's going on in October over at B-Dubs. Buffalo Wild Wings is raising money for the Boys and Girls Club. If you've never had a chance to take part, do anything with this organization, I tell you, I spoke out to different events that they have for them. I've attended different events. I've talked to the boys and girls that actually go through the Boys and Girls Club, and it is an absolute blessing in their lives. So if you want to make sure that you do your part to help support that, they'll be taking donations all month long. All you got to do is ask your server for details. And that's only in your Frederick, Urbana, Rockville, Gaithersburg, and Columbia location. Wings, beer, sports, you have to be here. Now, this ties us into transition. And it's funny because when you came out here, one of the things that we all looked around and we saw is, you know what, there's a few things that I can tell about my vets. I can tell that they're going to have my beards because we like our beards now. But one of the most amazing things is we support veteran-owned organizations so much.
Absolutely.
You see a lot of guys that actually wear, the Article 15s, the Ranger Ups, the Grunt style. I mean, I got on a Forged hat. I got on my 9-line apparel. And then you guys are right there, the same thing, dysfunctional veterans. And I know that bearded guy, I know how much you like to support them, the whole 9 yards. And I know that sometimes, and we talked about this before we went on air, there are people that give people shit about it.
Yep.
And I don't get it because what I've seen, I literally, not blowing smoke, the first person I thought of when I said, hey, I'm going to do this show was you. First person I reached out to. You were the first person I reached out to.
Right here.
Yep. I'm not going to give you a reach around, but, you were literally the first person I thought about out there because I knew how passionate you were about the veteran issues. But there seems to be, and I guess honestly, it's not within the veteran demographic itself. It's just society as a whole. I mean, in every walk of life, you have it. You have those people that because they're not doing something, they want to nitpick and find something wrong with those that are. And y'all were talking about how like you literally get a little bit of shit for the stuff that you wear.
Yeah, we do. And right out the gate, I want to give a little note here. For active duty guys, I get why you don't wear the veteran clothing. For one, you're not veteran status yet. For two, it makes you stand out in the crowd. And OPSEC speaking, you shouldn't be standing out in the crowd. When you're wearing civilian clothes, you should blend in with everyone around you. I get that. Now,
they never pull it off though.
Ever. Haircuts.
Yeah, I mean,
it's the haircuts and the walk.
It's like a busted thumb and a handful of dicks, man. They don't. We know who you are.
Instantly.
Yeah.
But on the veteran side of it, I mean, we get some crap about it, and not enough to really. Obviously, we're not going to stop wearing it.
Grown ass man.
I mean, I love wearing my vet clothing. I love flaunting the fact that I'm a veteran. But more so, it acts as a filter when you're in public. I cannot tell you how many amazing vets I have met just in passing because they're wearing the cool guy hat or the grunt style shirt, or I recognize the combat boots, or I just walk and I recognize how they're walking. Like I can just tell. It's like you have been forced to march before in your life, haven't you? You still haven't broken your handcuffs when you walk, right? And like we have a great veteran group up in where we live now. And
do you want to say where that is, Joe? Just
yeah,
so people maybe be able to bump into it?
In Westminster, Maryland. And
we don't really have a name. We're just a group.
Yeah,
Westminster, Maryland Military Destructing Group.
Yeah, we're just a group of guys who are all like mind, and the only reason why we've met each other is because of this clothing that we're wearing. And now these are some guys who I can absolutely consider my brothers, and just because we never served together, but we have shared experiences, and it's all because of just wearing the clothing. And so you hear some guys come out and say, "Oh, well, you're flaunting the fact and you shouldn't do that." Blah blah blah. I was like, well, you know what? Screw you, man. I earned this.
Yeah.
I did, and I'm gonna wear it, and I'm gonna wear it until the day I die, because I'm proud of it.
But you know what? It's to me what makes the shit comical is that we're in NFL season right now.
Yeah.
How many people go out and drop $70 on a jersey for somebody that might be
that was my argument too.
Might be on that team for 2, if they're lucky, maybe they're 5 years. You have your anomalies like your Peyton Mannings or your Tom Brady's that are on a team for a long time. But the reality is, dude, you go out and you drop money and actually they just came off this. A lot of people didn't know this. Just until last year, maybe it's 2 years now, the NFL was a nonprofit. A lot of people had no clue. It's the largest nonprofit in the world. So you're just sitting here pumping your money into these organizations that are making money hand over fist, and you get to tattoo of the Buffalo Bills or the Redskins, and sometimes I look at people, I'm like, you do realize you don't get any money. You're not,
And they're making
you're not,
millions
you're
off
not
of
part
doing
of the
that.
team. And listen, I'm a super capitalistic guy. I have zero problem with the NFL making money. I have zero problem with athletes making money. But my point to everybody has always been this: like you give guys grief about wearing and supporting a veteran entrepreneur that got out and said, this is what I did. And you know why I think it's so amazing? And y'all got into the service a little bit later than I did. My boy Shrek's over there, and he's my sergeant at arms with Desert Knights. But Shrek is old as dirt too. He's getting on up there in age. Y'all don't know the struggle, and let me look you in the eye, audience. All of you veterans today do not know the struggle of only being able to order military shirts from Ranger Joe's, okay? You don't know the struggle because you had 3 shitty designs.
Dude, those shirts are awesome.
Those shirts are not awesome. They fit like a used condom, and they friggin' were horrible. The most horrible designs ever. Now you got cool shirts with Vikings and hatchets and subdued American flags, and somebody's Humvee looks like a skull, and they fit athletically.
I love that shirt.
And even if you're not an athlete, they make you look and feel athletic-y. That's a word. I'm pretty positive that it's just made up. And so my thing is, like, you look at these guys. I look at guys like Ranger Up, and I look making the top 500 list for fastest growing companies. Look what they did with Article 15 and going out and doing Range 15. The fact that they got up off of their asses and they went out and they said, you know what? I know that there is this subset, there's this less than 1% of the nation that actively serves, and there's only 7% of the nation that ever served, and we're going all the way back from World War II, but I know that those people exist, and I know that they're proud of it, and the fact of the matter is, I know they're tired of trying to take a back seat to everyone else. I know they want people to know that they were proud to serve. They're not ashamed of their service. There's nothing wrong with that. So why don't I actually do what we all wanted to do and create something cool and let them have it? But you're always going to have somebody who runs mouth. We actually walked into a restaurant 2 days ago. We went out and we had supported another local motorcycle club. We went out and supported the Warthogs at one of their events. They were raising money for their Heroes Fund that supported police and firefighters. Yeah. And we rolled out there, and afterwards we went into a restaurant in the day. And, we have our cuts on. And, we roll and we have the Scorpions on the back. And clearly, Desert Knights of American Motorcycle Club, clearly, we're vets. We're going to, that deal. But you still
have medals on the back of your cut.
Yeah.
So,
but I end up watching, and you see this this one dude, and he's like, oh, Scorpions, hi. And I think a lot of times that is where the transition becomes difficult. Because the reality is that most of the people that went into the military, and I'm going to really drill this down and listen, I'm not, it has nothing wrong with you being a pogue. You're totally fine. Mechanics are cool. I can't fix anything, so I definitely need you in there.
I was a pogue.
You were a combat engineer. We had this discussion.
You're on doc level, bro.
Yeah. Docs are automatically in there. But the reality is that everybody that went in, especially in this theater of operations, I mean, there were plenty of people, because I did convoy escort, there were plenty of people that were riding in that damn Humvee that were not combat MOSs, and they were getting shot at and blown up just like we are. But the reality is that they're type A people, and especially when you go into a combat MOS, and especially if you get deployed, especially because you've had to split a wig, and the reality, when you come out and somebody wants, I always go back to that old Conan quote that, civilized men are more discourteous than barbarians because they know they can, and I paraphrase here, can be a smart ass without getting their wig split. And the reality is, I think that's part of the reason why veterans have that difficult time transition, because you are used to being held accountable for the words that come out of your mouth and the actions that you take. And when you go into an environment where that's not the case and people just pop off at the gums, now you really don't know how to do it.
You're used to that hierarchy and that structure where, everyone does what they're supposed to do, and if they don't, they step out of line, either administratively or physically, they're going to get straightened out. There's consequences for what you do and what you say. Now you get out, and now that's not around anymore.
Yeah.
Of course, that's going to mess with you a little bit. And then, the thing with this is, going back to the clothing, I get a lot of flack for the dysfunctional veterans thing, because it's dysfunctional. And, some veterans say, oh, you're encouraging the stereotype that we're dysfunctional. And it's like, well,
It's satire.
it's not really, because, think about, you see people that wear, sports fans, they'll wear Ravens jerseys. It doesn't mean they play for the Ravens. You see teenagers wear, those ironic, kind of Hot Topic, sarcastic, dark humor T-shirts that they're psychos, but they're not really psychos. It's so my T-shirt that says, dysfunctional veteran, leave me alone, it's just a T-shirt. I've had civilians walk up to me and ask me about it. And they're like, are you really dysfunctional? No, not really. It's just a brand. And then, and the final point on that is, if you're freaked out by a T-shirt that says leave me alone, I don't want to talk to you anyway, because the chances are I'm going to say something that's going to offend you. So, but it's I always tell people, it's just a brand, it's just a T-shirt. I enjoy it. I like their kind of humor, and they kind of tie into that, struggles kind of coming back and adjusting. That's why it's called dysfunctional veterans. Is they're playing with that.
But you know what I don't get with people is that it's I don't understand why everybody else can have a sense of humor, but we're not supposed to. Or so many people, they come in, and I think people have. I don't even think. I know this for a fact. There is such a. There's such this. This is what we try to fight against in Platoon 22. There is such a stigma and misunderstanding of what goes along with people that may actually be having real. And when I mean real, I'm talking about they have. They have strong PTS, or they have a bad case of TBI, and that's different than the guy or the girl that comes back. And you know what? Listen, maybe they adjusted well, maybe they have a mild case of it, but the reality is they just don't want to deal with your shit.
Yeah.
And they may be, and no one thinks about the notion that, listen, there's all kinds that go in the military. There is a sarcastic asshole that's in the military, and the reality is there's probably a lot more of them in our demographic than there are in any other demographic out there.
Oh, yeah.
When I try to talk to people, when they talk about dysfunctional veteran, and that is a brand that gets brought up, and because of what we do with the nature of my company Soldier Fit and with Platoon 22, people have broached me about that subject, and I said, listen, you're worried about about a stigma that's going to be associated with you. Well, I'm a business owner. I'm going to tell you what I know, and the reality is that, do you show your ass up to work on time? Do you do the job that you're supposed to do? And are you not a headache? If you do those things, bro, lady, I don't give a shit what you want to shirt. But if you come in at 07, smelling like Jack Daniels or Jim Beams, then maybe you are, at this point in time, a little dysfunctional. Doesn't mean we can't help you get through it. Doesn't mean that we can't be a support structure for you. But don't worry about the clothing that somebody's wearing. Right. One of my big things, and this is why I'm so excited about the fact that companies like, again, shameless plug, they're not paying me any money, Ranger Up, Article 15, Grunt Style, Forge, 9-Line Apparel. The reason that I like this so much, and one of the reasons that I try to go around and, again, told y'all why I wanted to bring y'all on in the show, why I'm trying to bring a lot of different vets on the show, and what I've done in my own life. Success in America no longer looks like a suit and tie.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like, I think, and I tell people all the time, I think the next thing that's going to burst is going to be the college. Because the fact of the matter is, you don't need a college degree to be successful in this country. That's a pipe dream that's been sold to a lot of people. It set a lot of people back. I even was going to go back, and I have my associates, and I was, even with Soldier Fit doing well and everything else, I was even going to go back and try to pursue my bachelor's degree. And the fact of the matter, I went in there, and I'm surrounded by kids, and I'm not learning anything. And you can learn something from everybody, I admit that, but I don't need to spend a semester in there.
Feeling like Billy Madison.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And so when I see guys, and I'm sure there's girls out there as well that says, hey, you know what? I have this great idea. I'm gonna reach down. I'm gonna grab my gumption, and I'm gonna freaking go out and I'm gonna lay it on the line. I'm gonna start something. I'm gonna get that hustle. I'm gonna start a clothing line. I'm gonna start my own gym. I'm gonna start friggin' my own welding service. I'm gonna move furniture, dude. As long as you don't suck at life, you've got my dollar, and you're gonna have my dollar all day long. Why would we not go buy a nice, beautiful fleece by 9 Line? Again, not paying me any money. It's just very comfortable. Why would we not do that, as opposed to go to J.C. Penney and buy some off the brand thing that does nothing to help one of our brothers or sisters move forward?
Absolutely.
There's no reason why you shouldn't, man. Like, honestly. My biggest thing, like, when I first got out, I'm not gonna lie, you have that 3-month happy period. It's kind of like when you're first in a new relationship, you have the romantic period. Like that, those first 3 months when I was out, I wanted absolutely nothing to do with the military. Nothing. I didn't wear anything that made me stand out like the military. I grew my hair out, grew my beard out, but it was like all unruly and gangly and whatnot. I didn't even had a tie-dye shirt. Like, I just wanted nothing to do with the military. And then once you get that past that 3-month part, you really start to miss the little things about the military, like the brotherhood, which that's not sort of little thing. That's actually the biggest thing for me, at least. And you realize that is just gone.
I still remember the first time I met you. Do you remember the first time you looked longingly into my eyes? Fuck you.
Yeah, that's fair.
You had to think about it.
A little one-sided there.
I was actually doing what I do now. As a matter of fact, it was one of the most epic days of my life. I mean, I only introduced Dropkick Murphy live on stage
yeah,
at
concert.
Shamrock Fest.
Yeah, I saw you from afar. You're with the
And
group
it's
of
okay.
guys.
You know what? Robert Eiler, he said he just wants to say hi. He said hi, Dom. And, you know, clearly you're better friends with him because you probably know where you met Robert Eiler.
Yeah, that'd be high school.
Oh, great. Well, hey, congratulations, Robert. You're a real friend. I'm just an
real
asshole.
quick, Danny, by the way, he's Frederick County Sheriff's Deputy. He's a guy you want.
I mean,
he's good people.
I'm not getting arrested. I practice the law. I am a law-abiding citizen, sir, 100%.
Yeah, I remember that concert now. It was Shamrock Fest.
You know why you don't remember? Because you were drinking from a horn.
True story. Yeah, I was rocking my kilt that day too.
Yeah, you wore a kilt. You looked like a straight. Looked like you wanted to be a straight Viking.
Things a little fuzzy coming back to
you.
Yeah, a lot of alcohol that day.
It just takes you back the whole 9 yards. And, you know, we've been trying to get you to be part of the Desert Knights ever since then. We know we're going to get you one day. It's going to come along.
Definitely.
And, you know, when you're looking at talking about that transition period, and you do kind of go through that honeymoon phase where, and this is the thing that I talk to a lot of people about, is whether you've been in 20 years or whether you've been in 4 years, when you go through friggin', I have an active warrant. What?
Is that right?
I don't listen. I don't have. I do not have an active warrant. And if I'm running for political office, I don't have an active warrant.
Hey,
I'm gonna Google that.
Robbie, I'll text you his address.
Eric Fritz wanted to say, "What's up, Sarge?" This is honestly, that threw me for a loop. So this is when you chime in and you know, we should go to a commercial break on that. I don't have an active warrant. Hey, listen, guys, especially for I'm sure Robert knows all about these guys. You go over to the Machine Gun Nest and listen. I've known them and been friends with Matt and Rob and Steph and Haley and him ever since they've been trying to get this thing up off the ground, and they are just absolutely outstanding people. And I can tell you one thing that I guarantee without a fact. We will not just take your money and give you an advertisement if you're a douchebag or if we don't like you. So you actually have to have an outstanding product. I go out there, I shoot every single Wednesday. I link up with Matt. You know, actually, when I was in the military, guys, I didn't do much. I didn't actually do much pistol shooting. I actually was only AR, and it was 50 cal. And 203, and I'll lead into a story with that in a little bit. But the reality is I didn't do much pistol shooting, so I've been out there a lot, and they have done a ton to help step my pistol game up. And that's really what they're all about out there, is training, getting you in there. They actually have competitions every Wednesday night so that you can go and realize how good you really aren't. But they'll help train you along that way. They have date night. Take your lady out there. Have a good time. And when you go out there, just make sure you use, are you ready for this, my active duty, my veteran people out there? I want you to use VV214. That's Veteran Voices 214. Let them know that you heard about us here on Veteran Voices, and they'll hook you up with a great deal. But I will tell you, it's one of the funniest things I've ever done. I used to always ask myself and say, hey, friggin' why do we do all this dumb shit in training, right? And we were coming over, we called it Spaghetti Bridge. And we were coming over there. It was one of those nice days, and I always gun truck for. I was gunning the rear of the gunning the rear convoy position. And they open up, man, and with a machine gun. I like, dude, like, not an AK-47, man. They were hitting heavy, and I was like, man, are we shooting? And so I turn around, and I look, and the NTV in front of me is just getting lit up, man. And so I was like, oh, shit. So we were going like, it's like major highway, 2 lane, 3 lanes this way, 3 lanes the other way. So I turned, and I started engaging the building. And the worst thing that could ever happen to you in a gunfight happens, my shit jams. And I was like, I tell people, man, you haven't lost confidence in life. If you think like a girl turning you down in front of the entire world sucks, let your shit jam in a gunfight. So anyway, I go and I friggin' hit remedial action, man. I got a chunk and that shit jams again. And I was like, whatever, man. I reach over and I grab my 203, and I did the most boot shit ever. I grab my 203 and I aim it in the direction of the enemy, and I fire that 203, and it's a beautiful shot too. Bends in, stops the ambush. But when I shot, I yelled out, 203! Just like my ass was on the range. And I remember sitting there like as we passed by, I was like, did I just yell 203 in a gun? I am a fucking joke.
Did anybody else notice?
You know what? Because you don't want to risk, because you know the mic's always on. You don't want to risk like giving people. I'm like Eminem off 8 Mile. You're not gonna be able to make fun of me. I'm gonna make fun of myself first. So as soon as we got back, I clown myself about it. But now you've made it through the transition. Now at least on the outside, you look like you keep in shape. You're a rather handsome fella. So I'm assuming that you work out a little bit. I know you have the comic book strip that you do right now, and then you also have the stuff in the gaming industry, right? You work with that. So tell us, like, I call it post transition. You've transitioned now. You are a dirty, nasty civilian. So how is that working for you? And what have you found has been let me start off with this actually better. Are you both in good, happy places?
Honestly, over the last 6 months, I've been tested quite a bit, just normal life struggles that every person, veteran or not, goes through. And it's all because of this vet group, this local vet group that we have, that I was able to make it through. Like, I was able to go to them and turn off the filter and just vent everything to them. And by the time I was done venting, I already had a new plan on how I was going to address it in my head, going. And just having that kind of brotherhood nearby again. I mean, you almost feel like you're back in the barracks again, just hanging out and swapping stories, swapping lies, doing whatever you want to do. And it's just done absolute wonders for me, man. And that's the number one tip I can give every veteran out there is surround like-minded people. Do not lock down. Like, let it go. Let it out. If you got something that's troubling your soul, don't contain that demon. Let him out.
The amount of veterans that we've met, and then like they'll hang out with us in our group for a day, and then the next day they'll message me or they'll message Dom or both of us and be like, I feel so much better. That would really help a lot. Like it happens every time. Every time we find a new one. So
I mean, just last night we're hanging out at the bar that we both.
The Corman.
Yeah, we both bounced at a local bar on Thursday nights with a couple other veterans as well. I mean, we don't need to do it for the money. We do it just purely to have a little bit more action in our life. But we had a corpsman, and right off the bat, within a minute, one of our buddies, Brandon Lucio, he had like some bump on his back, and he walked up and was like, "Hey Doc, can you look at this?" Corpsman didn't know him, didn't know any of us. Immediately, they were both walking outside. He had his light out, he's going through. He's like, "I don't know if I can drain this or anything like that," but like instantly, no hesitation, brotherhood, and we were hanging out with him. He's Facebook friends with us now, and we invited him to this camping trip we have planned for Veterans Day. And just like that, we have another one in our group, another guy. I don't know him from Adam, but I already trust him more than I would trust a civilian than me.
Well, and before we go into this, Kelly Kip, she actually wants to know. She actually, just if you could say one thing apiece. What is the single most difficult struggle with transition?
Well, I can tell you what mine was. When I went in at 17, when I got out, I was 21 years old, and for a while there, like I was happy to be out, but I maintained the image. So I still get the haircut, but I was clean shaven, and the thing was, even though I was, a combat veteran, I had been blown up in Iraq, and I had seen a lot, I looked so young that people didn't believe that I was a veteran. Like, I was walking through the mall one day. This was like 6 months after I was out, and I saw some Marine recruiters walking around the mall trying to high school kids in. I was like, oh, there's my guys, So I was like, hey, what's up, fellas? And I heard one of them stop and say, hey, man, do you go to school around here? And I'm like, and it took me a minute to realize he thought I was a high school kid. And I walked up to him and I was like, dude, I did my time. And he was looking at me like he didn't believe me. And he started, going to the questions. He thought I was lying. I pull out my ID. I was like, dude, I did my time. And he was like, oh, wow, you look really young. And it's like, that was a struggle for mine. It was like, people just didn't believe that was it. Like, and the thing is, like, it really frustrated me because people thought I was that I was young. And, some people were like, oh, well, it's a good thing. That's a compliment. But it's like, they didn't do it in a complimenting way. It wasn't like, excuse me, how old are you?
What's up, kid?
Yeah. It's like they just wrote me off. Like, oh, that's just some kid, whatever.
And that did suck. I have no doubt that it sucks. But when you're 52, you're going to be happier than a pig in shit.
Well, that's what I keep being told. But
the first, when he and I first started like hanging out, because like Kaleb and I know each other from high school. Like we never really talked or hung out in high school. It's just, again, veteran clothing. He was wearing this functional veteran shirt, I was wearing a gun style shirt. I walked over and said, hey, man, what's up? And then we realized, oh, hey, we went to high school together.
Yeah.
And we just started swapping stories, and we've been hanging out ever since.
Yeah.
And when he first told me about that issue that he had, I'm like, because he had like a really small beard going, like a George Clooney, 5 o'clock shadow wannabe. And I told him, like, dude, grow your beard out. You earned it.
It's helped immensely.
I mean, and look at this red beard.
Yeah.
Look at how glorious that thing is.
I am pumped about his weird beard.
Dude.
You know what? And Brandon, and I know I'm going to mess your name up, Brandon, but Brandon Lucio, gave a shout out to you guys and say, hey, listen, man, you're part of the tribe. The reason that, y'all help keep that guy sane. He's came out to the house a couple times. We're going to get him on a motorcycle too one day. I think he said he's going to go up to Maine or something silly in the wintertime. I don't understand, for some work stuff or whatever. But, we got to back up the transition thing. But what are y'all doing now? What's your goal and, where you headed with it?
So, like, right now, I'm constantly dabbing in various things. Because I want to be my own boss.
That doesn't sound.
Oh no, it came out exactly as I wanted.
Okay.
And so like I started doing I want to do a clothing line. I called it Hero Supply Co. with one of my buddies, and that flopped just out of like disinterest. Started doing the comic strip, Kilroy the Pissed Off Vet, and you can feel free to Facebook that, by the way.
Kilroy
the Pissed Off Vet.
We'll send a link out to it.
So there you go. And all it is like situations that I've found myself in, or one of my brothers have found themselves in. I turn it into a funny comic strip with, I add a satirical twist to it. But all of it's like real world stuff. And I have another one dropping tomorrow that's about a really embarrassing situation I found myself in at my office. And I gotta tell you this story. I really do. So they put me in charge of this outreach program. They were doing a charity for Baltimore. This place called Second Chance in Baltimore, where they go around and they tear down dilapidated neighborhoods, and they try to take as much material out of it and save it and resell it. And also at the same time, they're giving jobs to guys who have difficulties getting employment. These are like ex-cons and veterans. God, cons and veterans, we get like lumped into the same category.
Because we're probably a lot of times in the same place.
And but anyway, so they put me in charge of this group, and we had a last-minute meeting beforehand. And I'm going through, and I'm knife-handing everyone that's there. We got like 60 people who are supposed to show up. I get to the point of safety. I'm like, I really need to say something about safety. It's like, okay, I'm anal retention about safety. So I'm filtering everything I'm saying in my head before I'm actually saying it out of my mouth. And I was doing a really good job until I get to the safety part. And I knife-hand the group, where I'm like, just say you're very serious about safety. Yeah, I'll say that. Don't say anal retention. That's bad. And I look at the crowd. I'm knife-handing, and I say, I take anal very seriously. And it's just like a hush across the crowd. people are staring at me. Like, all the directors are there. The company owner is there. Sid Meier, Mr. Game God, is there. And some people start laughing. Some people get, like, really red-faced. Some people get up and just walk out of the room. Like, it was, like, so absolutely awkward. And at that point...
I could imagine.
And I look over at my HR rep and I said, well, I guess I'll start clearing out my desk. It's like at that point you just gotta own it and drive on. And so the comic strip that I have dropping tomorrow actually has to do with that situation. And it's just that's how I deal with it now. Is I take a bad and I turn it into a good.
That whole life gives you lemons and you make apple juice type of deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how about you? What are you doing now?
Well, for work, I mean, I was very fortunate. I got a job working at Carroll County government as a web programmer.
Oh.
It's a nice, cushy job. I mean, it took
you
me...
don't look that smart.
Oh, thanks, man.
Well, that's good. You are an engineer.
Yeah.
I say, here's a no joke. It's like, even as an Army guy, I'm always talking about the history and telling the history of your organization, why it's so important. And I always use the Marines as an example. Because I'm always like, listen, literally today I was talking to somebody that was trying to start up a business. I'm like, it's so important to tell your story, your history, your why. And I was like, example, you look at the Marines and the halls of Mother Nature. I was like, it's the Army song. The Army goes roll. Every time the Army song sings,
I've heard him complain about the Army song.
I want to punch somebody about the Army song.
Then you just want to go back in time and just be like, dude, no. You need to add some chaos, some death dealing, some stacked bodies in there.
We went rolling along.
Give us something.
Why don't you just say we went frolicking along in a serene pasture of daffodils, and somewhere along the line we found a tank tread, and it was all rosy from there. It's the worst song in the history of music that has ever been written.
Well, I gotta say, Winston Churchill, and I'm paraphrasing here. I don't know what his actual quote was. But during World War II, he said, the only propaganda machine to rival the Nazis is that of the United States Marines.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I tell people all the time, this isn't even like an insult. This is like legit, this is a straight compliment. Like, the Marines don't have the newest gear because they spend all that shit in advertising.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you look at what Marines do. Marines, they friggin' are always storming something in a video. They fought a lava monster. They caught a sword.
It's slaying the dragon.
It turned into their sword catching turns them into friggin' a beautiful set of dress blues, which every service is envious of that shit, right?
Yeah, entirely.
100%.
Best uniform.
And then you sit down and what do you look at the Army? Some bastard with his dog tags out. Might as well have his hat on backwards. No friggin' BDU, and he's running the opposite way of the fight. Like, everyone else is going that way, and that fool is running the other way, and it's just, the Army of One was arguably the worst marketing ploy.
It's better than Army Strong.
I don't know. It's all I was be all you could be.
Yeah, I like be all you can be. That was great. That sends some purpose. But when they spent like millions of dollars developing Army Strong, really, that's all you could come up with?
No, because the reality is, just like everything else in life, it went to the absolute lowest bidder.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hey guys, we're glad that y'all came out. And at the end of every segment, we're going to do basically what I've always done on Facebook, which is just the ramblings of an old infantryman. And here's what I hope you understand, is that if you look at these guys, we talk about it all the time, and this is really going to be a recurring theme on the show, is that success is not... It doesn't look like what a lot of people have told you that it looks like. Success does not mean that you're coming in and you're wearing a white-collared suit and tie. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's your thing. But don't do what I did. I spent, 33 years of my life telling myself that I was stupid, that I had no abilities, that I couldn't do anything, I couldn't chase my own dreams because I didn't look or act or talk or have the pedigree that everyone else had. The fact of the matter, especially to those of you who've went overseas, did your time in the daggone sandbox, faced down the enemy, you have something that the average person does not have. You have a level of drive, perseverance, and grit that the truth of the matter is that all of the basement dwellers wish that they had. Never sell yourself short. Never think that you can't accomplish everything that you did. You already have everything that you need to be able to do that. You already have the training. You already have the soft skills. And my only request to you is that starting today, you decide to wake up tomorrow and chase your dreams. Dominic, Kaleb, we appreciate y'all coming on. This has been Veteran Voices. We'll see you here next week at 1700. Have a great day, everybody.
Later.